Book one on is all about. The book's not a read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a best-selling author for his debut book, The Gospel Fitness, no other than Mr. Steve McKinney.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Great to be here.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Steve, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am a personal trainer. I'm actually a jujitsu black belt, and I'm also a pastor. So I have a lot that goes on, and I've been doing the personal training thing for over 30 years, Daniel. And what I did when I started this business, I do one-to-one private personal training. And so I kept records of whatever people did. And what I tried to do was to figure out a way that I could keep people in shape, not only for a short period of time, but for the rest of their life. And from there, the book just kind of came into play after just keeping track of everything. And I put all my records together, figured out what people could do, wrote about it in the book, and it really has done pretty well.
Mr. Steve McKinney, thank you so much for sharing the gospel fitness to the world. So, why do you refer to fitness as a gospel, and how does this shape the message of your book?
So, Daniel, here's the thing. If people want to get in shape and they go to the internet, there's just a plethora of information. And with that information, it gets super confusing to people. And so for me, the word gospel actually means good news. And so I talk about the good news of fitness. And I also came up with a method that I use. And the method is called the 3W approach to 3W approach to fitness. If people hold up three fingers and it actually makes a W, it's weight training, walking, and watching your diet. And so what I did with this book is I put everything that is logical and rational together because I talk about how to age gracefully. And as people get older, they lose their strength. And so I put this all together. And the number one thing I do is try to get people to regain their strength or to slow down the aging process. And those three W's are my system that I put together for that.
I like that. Slow the aging process. Longevity, people. So, how does a rational approach to aging gracefully entail, Mr. Steve?
So going back to my 3W approach, the number one thing that I do in the fitness and with the book is weight training. And weight training needs to be very specific and it needs to be done in a proper way. I define exactly how to lift weights and what to do. I use a principle called tension. And what I mean by that is I'm not just worried about how much weight I lift, I'm worried about how I lift the weight. See, the weight in and of itself is a tool, and the tool is used for a purpose. And the purpose that I have is to what I call stimulate muscle. But Daniel, here's the thing. As get older, their joints begin to hurt. And this starts at about the age of 35. If you don't do anything right at about the age of 35, you begin the decline. And so what I do is I show people how to lift weights properly, but also to make sure they don't hurt their joints. So the first W is weight training. The second W in my system is walking. And a lot of people who come to me and a lot of people who read this book, they want to just look better and feel better. So most people are a bit overweight. And so the idea then is I show people how, and I'll talk about diet in a second, but I show people how important walking is and when you do it. Now, what I mean by that is if you're trying to lose weight, the best time to walk is immediately after your evening meal. And the reason for that is and there was a study done years ago. This guy did a study and he measured what's called your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. All that means is what's your calorie burn rate sitting still. But then he also measured how many calories you burn after activity. And Daniel, here's what he measured. He measured walking, And then he tested 3 hours later how many calories were burned. Then he measured eating and walking, and once again measured 3 hours later. Then he measured walking and eating. The one that did the best was eating and walking. So if you walk within 15 minutes after your evening meal and you walk for 30 minutes, it increases your basal metabolic rate by 25 to 30%. So everything I do in this book, Daniel, it's optimized. And I make sure that you can, and here's the beauty, I didn't mention this in my weight training part. My workouts are only 15 minutes long, but they're really, really high intensity workouts and they're done properly. Now, with those two W's said, there's a third W, it's watching your diet. And we've learned so much about food over the years. And food, eaten properly, is medicine. You can heal a lot of things with eating properly. And so the big thing is if I'm trying to lose weight, I need to create a what's called a calorie deficit. And if I'm trying to gain weight, I need to eat more calories. And so we look at that perspective and how much protein to eat and all those things. And then I blend them all together and it works perfectly. If you think about what's out there on the internet and someone who wants to get in shape and they look up, hey, how do I get in shape? Well, they're going to go to the gym an hour a day, 5 days a week. They're going to do an hour of cardio. Dan, you're at 10 hours a week. That's 40 hours a month. That's a part-time job.
Mm.
So for me, I have only two 15-minute workouts per week. I can get people incredible results in that short period of time. So I put all those things together, and the book's been out since January, and I get testimony after testimony, people sending me messages and how much it helped them, how much they figured out that they can actually develop a fitness program in the middle of a busy schedule and still be able to remain in shape for a long period of time. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, Mr. Steve, and very well articulated. Very well said.
Thank you.
So, in your view, what are some common myths about aging and fitness that you address in the book?
So here's the first one. One of the biggest mistakes we make is we go, I put it like this, it's in the book. We go in like a lion and out like a lamb. Take the beginning of the year, for example. Everybody runs to the gym. Everybody signs up for a year contract. They start working out. The gym's packed. By February, the gym's empty, but they're still paying money for what they don't go and use. So they go in like a lion in January, but they're out like a lamb in February and March. That's a number one mistake they make. Let me give you another one mistake. People don't have specific goals. Whenever a client comes to me, we set a specific goal. I just had a client in last week. They have their weight, we'll just call it 175. And I said, okay, look, here's our goal. I want to get you down to 150. We're going to look for 25 pounds of body fat loss, not just weight loss, Daniel, body fat loss. See, we don't want to just lose weight because when you're looking at just losing weight, you're going to lose muscle. And if you don't do it correctly, you even lose bone density. And lifting weights properly builds bone density. It fights against osteoporosis. So you have to have specific goals in what you're doing, and you have to know how to get those goals. And I outlined that in the book. And then the other thing is, I tell people when you set up your program, the most important thing to do is put it on your schedule. You're going to set a 15-minute workout 2 days a week. What I did in the book, though, I took people through 3 days a week to begin with so they can learn the program. And then I cut them back to the normal 2 days a week. And so, but I always tell people if you set those schedules, those workouts as schedules, treat them as doctor's appointments because they're medicine. And if you treat them as doctor's appointments, the more you make those workouts, the less doctor's appointments that you're going to have.
The less, for sure. So, Mr. Steve, how does your fitness philosophy differ from other popular approaches geared toward older adults?
So the difference for me is safety. I have people train their muscles and save their joints. I've been through 3 different states doing the book tour. And the number one thing, and this was eye opening to me, Daniel, this was incredible to me. I'm 64 years old. My joints are still good. I just trained an hour of jujitsu before our podcast today. I keep myself busy. I have the young guys in there, 27, 20, 30 years old. I'm rolling around with them. I just have so much fun. And I can still compete with them. I mean, obviously, they're younger than me. But here's the number one thing that I see, Daniel. So many people have so many joint problems. And I'm going to tell you where that comes from. That comes from misinformation. When you go to the internet, you look at like, hey, you're supposed to do this, you're lifting these weights, you're throwing them around. That really hurts your joints. I'll give you another example. I get a lot of referrals from physicians and chiropractors, physical therapists, and a lot of those referrals come from joint pain, knee pain, hip pain, ankle pain from people who are constant runners. And running too, and I'm not saying running's bad. I'm saying running too much is bad. And so if you think about running and you're 150, 200 pounds, every single step you take is beating on those knees and beating on those ankles over and over and over again. And what happens is those joints begin to break down, and that's where the pain comes from. So I deal with a lot of people who have a lot of misinformation out there, and they have a lot of joint problems. And I'm going to get back to specifically to answer your question, how does my philosophy different? My philosophy is different in the fact that I use a principle called tension. We keep the muscle what's called under the load for a period of time, but my movements are slow. Now, Daniel, I'll give you a little science on that. So I keep the muscle under the load, and I keep it under the load for a reason, because I want to stimulate every single muscle fiber in the exercise that I'm targeting. And so there are four different muscle fiber types. There's called slow oxidative, that's the first one. Fast oxidative is the second one. Fast oxidative glycolytic is the third one. And the fourth one, and this is your thickest bundle, it's called fast glycolytic. Now, muscles, what they do is they fatigue in what's called sequential order. So, what that means is that first muscle, the slow oxidative, that fatigues relatively quickly if you keep the muscle under tension. Now, if you don't keep the muscle under tension, what happens is that muscle fiber type can recover. That's why I use the principle of tension. So that first muscle fiber type, it fatigues, okay? Then if you're keeping it under tension, the second muscle fiber type fatigues, and the third fatigues. But that takes time to do. That takes anywhere from 45 to 60 seconds to get to the point where I want to get. So I'm keeping that muscle under the load for 60 to 90 seconds. And if I fatigue those three, I get to that fourth muscle fiber type. Now, Daniel, here's what's interesting. Based on the individual, it takes anywhere from 2 to 20 seconds to stimulate that muscle fiber type. Now, here's also what's interesting. That muscle fiber type is the thickest of all of the bundles. And that when you stimulate that muscle and that fiber type, it takes anywhere from 4 to 10 days, once again, based on the individual to recover. That's why I can train people 2 days per week, because most people, what they do is they go to the gym and they work out. Then they go back the next day and they work out. Then they go back the next day and they work out. They've not let their body recover enough to get stronger. They've only let their body recover enough to get to the next workout. So what I do is I let my clients' muscles, and I write about this in the book, not only recover or what's called compensate, I let them super compensate. And super compensation is where the strength happens. And so the goal is to keep my client and the book reader as strong as I can for as long as I can, and to make it the most efficient that I can. That's why the workouts are short, but also as safe as I can. That way, I can keep people training and I can keep them healthy for the longest period of time that I can.
Short but effective, people. So, what role does mindset play in your rational approach to fitness and aging?
Great question. So, mindset. Here's what I talk about mindset. When I'm teaching people to lift weights, the number one thing, and this sounds kind of odd, but I am connecting my mind to the muscle that's being worked. And what I do is I'm actually feeling what is happening during the set. So I'm not just lifting a weight up and down, I'm feeling what's happening. And those muscles, after a certain point, just like I explained earlier, those muscle fiber types, they begin to fatigue. But when that happens, it gets really uncomfortable. Those muscles get they get fatigued and they begin to burn. So what I teach people to do is I say that burn is where the magic happens. We want to embrace that burn. We want to hold on to that burn as long as we can. We want to think about what we're doing, connect the mind to the muscle, and I call it chasing the burn. And once I get that burn, that's where the magic happens. And so, but that takes a mental approach. You have to stay very focused on what you're doing. I call it being present. A lot of times you see people go into the gym and they're talking in the middle of a set or thinking about what groceries they have to pick up on the way home. That's not what I do. What I do is I have people actually efficiently load the muscle and connect their mind to the muscle, making it burn, staying very present in the middle of everything that we do. And that optimizes our results. Now, here's the other part of that. The other part of that is I don't let people rest from exercise to exercise. We only do one set. So I don't have them rest. So their heart rate is elevated the whole time. So they get this aerobic benefit. Their heart gets stronger. So once again, everything I do is based on efficiency, and then connecting the mind to the muscle really matters. And then Daniel, one more thing, understanding and trusting the process, because what I do is so different than any other trainer. Very few trainers do what I do, but I've optimized this. I've made it the most efficient way that I can and the safest way. And I have people that have trained this way for 30 plus years, and it just works like a charm.
Well, thank you for those 30 years, Mr. Tibbs, for sharing your knowledge to the world. So, what will be your advice for those people out there who want to follow the gospel fitness?
So I think once the first thing, obviously, you want to get the book and you want to read through it. Now, here's the other thing. What I did in the book, Daniel, is I put a home workout and then I put a gym workout. And so if you have a gym membership, you can go to the gym, you could use that, or you can set up a place at home to work out. Here's what I advise people when they have a home gym. I advise people to make that a very safe place, to make it an exclusive place. Don't have it cluttered. That place is yours and it's a sanctuary so that you can get in there and you set up your workout and you use that safe place to get a super efficient workout in, and you want to make sure everything's set up in the middle of it. And so those two things really matter. I had a guy that had called me for a consultation, and I said, send me some pictures of your equipment. So he sends me a picture, and his equipment's in the garage, and it was totally disheveled. And I said, okay, before you start the workout, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go into your garage and I want you to clean it up. I want you to put a radio, a CD play, anything in there so that you can have this safe place. I want to make sure that the weights are put where they're supposed to be. And then once you get in there, you go back to what you had asked me earlier. You're prepping your mind for the workout. I'm thinking about what I'm doing. And then I get in there and I get it going and I get it done in a short period of time. I set myself back up, clean everything up, and go from there. Now, with that said, if people are going into the gym, you have to know what exercises you're going to do, and you have to be able to adapt, because in a big gym, people are using equipment sometime and you can't actually get to that set. So you have to be able to set those things up. In my personal training gym, I only do one-to-one private. It's about a 750, 800 square foot place. I have all my machines set up, and we just go from one exercise to the next. So there's no waiting around. And so all of those things put together really, really make a difference. And then I also say, you're in there, you're focused, you are not having conversation with people. You're in there for a purpose, and the purpose is to make sure that you get stronger, and then you do it in a safe and efficient manner.
Mr. Steve, thank you for your advice. So, what would be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Daniel.
What will be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Oh, perfect. Okay, I already have another book in my mind. So
Yes.
I have another book based on what I've learned from here. Now, my short-term goal, I'm still marketing this. I'm still working on this. I am still doing public speaking. I just did a local Rotary Club. I'm still doing public speaking. I'm doing businesses. I speak at businesses, speak at churches. I speak at community centers. I speak at the Chamber of Commerce, Rotary clubs, anything like that. And that helps educate people. The short-term goal is really this. Obviously, you want your books to sell, but the big thing is I want to educate people in the proper way to do exercise, and I want to communicate that to everyone. And I, once again, the feedback that I've got on this is really, really exciting, because people are getting results. Now, my long-term goal, I have another book in mind, and once I kind of settle into where I'm at, I'm going to look at maybe a bigger publisher and see what we can get going in that area. And it's going to be my second book, so that'll make a big difference in how much I can get that out there. But right now, I'm just laying the groundwork. I'm laying the framework for getting my message out to as many people as I can.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Steve, and please do come over on Book 101 Review and let's talk about your new book. So, what are your thoughts on using technology and apps to support fitness routines for older adults?
That is a great question. So I'll give you an example, and then I'll answer your question. One day I had a guy come in the gym and he's wearing the Fitbit, the technology, because
Yes.
I want to count my calories, I want to count my heart rate. To me, way too much information. I don't use those things. And I'll tell you why. Because we're humans. And in the middle of a fitness program, I don't want technology dictating things for me. Now, I can use that feedback. I'm not opposed to it if someone wants to use it. But this guy comes into the gym and he says, "Hey, I'm trying to lose weight and I'm not losing weight." And I said, "Well, here's the bottom line. If you're not losing weight, you're eating too much food. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that." I said, "How many calories are you eating?" He said, "I'm eating 2,000 calories," something to that effect. And I said, "Well, that's too much food." And he points to his Fitbit and he's mad. He's mad at me. And he says, "But my Fitbit says I can eat this much food." And I look at him and I said, "Listen, your Fitbit's wrong. The only thing when you're losing weight that you want to look at is you want to look at the scale. And the scale is
Yes.
going to dictate how much. Now, you have to make sure your nutrition is optimized, but you just want to look at the scale and see what it says. Now, some people love that feedback, they love all that information. I don't use it because it's too confusing. And what I'm looking at is I use technology in certain areas. For example, if people need to measure their body fat percentage, there's ways to do that. You can use technology to do that. But that is just one of the many feedback mechanisms that you can have. And so, but too much information can confuse the goal, because we want to have a goal going in. And if I have too many things coming in, Daniel, how do I know what to adjust? I have to be able to measure very few things. If I have too many things to measure, it's like throwing a bunch against spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. I only measure a few things. I want to measure, are you getting stronger? I want to measure, are you losing weight? And I want to measure how you are feeling. Those three things are important. And the how you feeling, how you're feeling thing, that is that's your own feedback mechanism. And so what I try to do is I try to get people in touch with what they're feeling and how their body's doing, and then we can make adjustments from there. So technology is not bad, but it is not something that I rely on, because the mirror, the scale, how your clothes fit, that is a very objective measure of what we're after, and then how you feel. And so I don't want to overuse technology and confuse myself in any way, shape, or form.
Totally agree, Mr. Steve. So before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101. It's fifth season, people, fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So please do listen, Food 101, wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Steve, if readers could implement only one practice from your book, what would you suggest as the most impactful?
Weight training. Proper weight training is the most impactful thing that you can do. It is the number one anti-aging pill that you can have. And obviously, the book's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble online, and it gives you a weight training methodology that you can use in a safe fashion. That is the number one thing, because we all suffer as we get older from disuse atrophy.
Certainly, Mr. Steve McKinney. Thank you so much for sharing the gospel fitness to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book?
Absolutely. So, hey, if you guys have any questions, you can go to fitnessandmore.net. You can fill out an intro workout. I'm at steve at fitnessandmore.net. The book is on amazon.com. I'd love to hear your feedback. Find me on Facebook, Steve McKinney. I'm on Instagram at fitnessandmorestl.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Steve McKinney because if you support him, more and more best-selling books to come. So,
Awesome. Thank
Mr.
you.
Steve, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be on here.
More to come, people. See you soon.